Salt. 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 Sodium chloride, NaCl. Salt is something that is so common that we hardly even notice that it is there unless there's too much of it. Or unless you're on a salt-free or reduced salt diet, then you really miss it, right? We put salt on everything, from eggs to grits to popcorn to potatoes to oatmeal to margaritas. Did I just say that? When you cook, if you forget to add salt to your eggs or your potatoes or your oatmeal or your margaritas, you will definitely know a difference immediately upon taste. Why? Because salt makes things taste better. It is a seasoning that enhances the flavor of food. But remember, salt has been used also as a preservative. Before refrigeration or canning, most meat was preserved in one or two ways: dried, smoked, or it was packed in salt and it was salt cured. Oh, we still get that country ham that's got the salt crust on it. Anybody? Don't tell your doctor though, right? But remember also that salt is a curative. It can help in healing wounds. It has medicinal qualities. Before the time of modern medicine, salt was used as an antiseptic. It burns like the dickens, but salt was often poured into an open wound to clean off any impurities. Sometimes a concoction of salt and vinegar was used for the same purpose, to clean and purify a wound so an operation could happen, or it might heal quicker and cleaner. Do you also know salt is a fertilizer? Don't ask me how it works, because I'm not a chemist, but in small quantities, the same chemical that kills bacteria can actually make things grow. And salt has been used also as cash. Anybody ever gotten paid in salt? Well, that at one time you probably could have. In ancient days, in antiquity, salt was used as a currency, a form of exchange, or even as a daily wage. It is the root word of our very word salary. That's where it comes from. If it means a man or a woman is worth his or her salt. Have you ever heard that? And so, we see Jesus could have used salt in a number of ways, but he distinctively went one particular way in these ancient words we're going to read together. As we read these words today, let us hear the metaphor just as Jesus distinctly intended it. A little salt brings out the flavor and makes otherwise bland food savory, delicious. And that flavor contributes towards peace on earth and peace among each other. So Mark chapter 9, verses 49 through 50. It's found on 1229 of your pew Bible. You may read along or listen to these few verses. Everyone will be salted with fire, verse 49 says. And then verse 50 says, salt is good. But if salt loses its saltiness, how will it become salty again? Maintain salt among yourselves and keep peace with each other. I'm also, though, going to read one more short passage. It comes from the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew's version. There's also a version in Luke and a smaller version in Mark, which we might have just read part of. But listen to this. Matthew 5:13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how will it become salty again? It's good for nothing except to be thrown away and trampled under people's feet. Verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city on top of a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they put it on top of a lampstand, and it shines on all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people so they can see the good things you do and praise your Father who is in heaven. The story of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
A little bit of salt will quickly show its worth. A little bit of faithfulness will change the earth. God, make us worth our salt, a church that's glad to be the change that you desire in each community. A lamp that's in a house gives safety, warmth, and light. It's set upon a table where it shines so bright. God, make your church a light that bravely takes a stand to bring your love and justice into all the land. A garden is a place where so much beauty grows, where flowers bloom and food is raised and water flows. When worship leads us out to care for the oppressed, oh God, you say we're like a garden at its best. When worship leads us out to love and serve the poor, to welcome in the immigrant at our own door, oh God, then we'll be called repairers of the breach, and way our church will be restorers of the streets. It's tempting to remain well hidden, quiet, bland, yet God, you make us salt and light to change this land. You send us out to love, to build and to repair, till peace and justice flourish here and everywhere.
A group of elementary school-age children were attending Sunday worship, and each child was then asked to write a letter to the pastor reflecting on their experience in church. Here are a few samples of their letters. John wrote, "Dear Reverend, I liked your sermon Sunday, especially when it was finished." Michelle wrote, "Dear Reverend, I like to go to church on Sunday because I don't have any other choice." True. Justin wrote, "Dear Reverend, thank you for your sermon Sunday. I will write more when my mother explains to me what you said." And Laura wrote, "Dear Reverend, I think more people would come to church if you would move it closer to Disneyland." out of the mouth of babes. We get 4 honest examples of why many people perhaps don't attend church today. Worship is too long. I have a choice and I choose to do other things on Sundays. I don't understand what happens in worship, and I really don't understand what the minister says. And worship is too boring and needs to be more engaging. It sounds like to me that these school-age children are suggesting that we, the church, could use a little salt, a little flavor. Jesus uses this common household commodity to teach them, the disciples, and us today, a valuable lesson. Please pass the salt. Jesus is making the suggestion that if you and I are going to be his disciples, you and I need a little more flavor in our lives. Jesus is saying the world needs peace, and the world needs a flavorful peace that happens because Jesus' followers are just salty enough that the world notices the enhancement they bring to life. Too much salt and the dish is ruined, right? Just enough salt and the dish is delicious and desired by all. It's a great lesson for the church today to learn. This is a mandate for the church, and it is our individual culinary instructions as people of faith from God, the great chef of the universe. Did you pick that up in our opening? Somebody had way too much time on their hands, didn't they? So if there is enough salt, godly flavor in our lives, and then the world notices it. Is our worship full of flavor? And do people long to taste and see what is good and holy and desirable in our lives and in our community of faith? Are we little shakers of salt? Or are we lacking the flavor in our lives of discipleship that God's recipe for peace calls for? Here are a few flavorful stories I found this week while reading and praying and preparing for these moments I would get to spend with you. While stuck in an elevator for 4 hours, a kind-hearted college student became a human chair when an elderly lady needed to sit down. She was there with her walker. She tried standing for a while, but he then got down on all fours and presented his back as a bench. And for at least 2.5 hours, she sat on that bench. An example of being a salt shaker, I would say. What would you? An Egyptian girl who lives in Cairo, Egypt, takes 20 minutes of her day, every day, as she comes home from work to stop and teach a 6-year-old child on the street. Why is a 6-year-old child on the street? Because their father is a street vendor. The only form of vocation the father can find. But this woman stops and teaches this 6-year-old how to read and how to write with the hopes that this child could go to school someday and find a new and different vocation in life than perhaps street vendor. An example of being a salt shaker. A factory worker takes his lunch hour every day to teach his coworker how to add and subtract, how to balance a checkbook so their family can budget their money. Another example of being a salt shaker. A Muslim man in New Jersey shops for groceries every week for his elderly Jewish neighbor. Think about that. He even goes to the kosher market to get the things on her list. What an example of being a salt shaker. A gentleman takes a huge turquoise table umbrella off the outside dining table on a patio restaurant. You've seen these? You've been under them, haven't you? He takes it off of the table and he walks 3 elderly people back to their cars in a Southwest Florida rainstorm. An example of being a salt shaker. Someone takes their own loose change that they've been collecting and they place $4 in dimes and nickels and quarters in multiple envelopes and tapes these envelopes to vending machines in bus stations and invites folks to have a quick snack on God. An example of being a salt shaker. A person in the company parking lot notices that a single mother's tires are bald and worn and places a note on the windshield that 4 new tires, mounting and alignment, are waiting for her at the local tire shop down the street. All she has to do is to present this note to the store manager. The tires and service are paid for. Wow. What an example of being a salt shaker. A police officer bought 20 box lunches when he drove by the senior center and discovered people outside waiting for lunch, but the center was closed because it was a holiday. A dry cleaners with a sign in the window that says, if you are going for a job interview, I will do your laundry for you so you can interview in clean clothes. An example of being a salt shaker. I read about those and I'm blown away by them. This one I witnessed personally. On May 29th, 2018, I was at the optometrist office around 2 p.m. following up with my optometrist. And in the waiting room, it was very, very crowded. The door opened and a very mature woman walked in and up to the receptionist to check in. And after she checked in, I heard the following from this very mature woman. She said these words, I lost my husband of 49 years at Thanksgiving this year. Today is our anniversary. I made this appointment to see the doctor today so I would have someone to talk to. Wow. That receptionist took an additional 20 minutes to listen to that lady and ask her, what are some things you and your husband did over your 49 years of marriage? Where did you travel? How were your children? Where did you live? And as a result of that woman being a salt shaker, that other woman seeking company on her anniversary did not spend her anniversary alone. These are all acts of flavor that bring a little peace to someone's world. It's not going to change their entire world, but it will bring a little moment of peace for a time and a place. This is one of the things that Jesus had in mind when Jesus spoke about his followers being salt of the earth. Bringing flavor and adding godly moments to the world. These godly moments are acts of compassion. They are acts of grace. They are acts of mercy, dashes of flavor, moments that create a little bit of hope. And moments that have a side effect. Perhaps a few minutes of peace. The old campfire song, they will know we are Christians by our love. You ever sung that one? I say that Jesus is saying to the disciples then and to us today in this text, they will know you are my followers by your saltiness. By your saltiness. One of the most beautiful things about God is how diverse God is in creation. Here's a list of 8 different types of salt that God has created. There is red Hawaiian salt and black Hawaiian salt. Did you know that? Now, many of you know there's pink Himalayan. Okay. There's also a Maldon smoked sea salt. There is a Celtic salt. There's a Fleur de Sel salt. There's table salt and kosher salt. Which salt will you be? We are diverse, and we are created in God's image. And we can be who God created us to be, the salt of the earth. A few minutes ago, Stephanie sang for us to the tune of Our God of Abraham Praise, A little bit of salt will quickly show its worth. A little bit of faithfulness will change the earth. God, make us worth our salt, a church that's glad to be the change you desire in each community. It's tempting to remain well hidden, quiet and bland. Yet, God, you make us salt and light to change this land. You send us out to love, to build, and to repair till peace and justice flourish here and everywhere. May we all be a little shaker of salt. And if our faith and flavor is enhanced with just the right amount of salt, then the people of today will not say those things about church, that it's too boring. I have a choice and I choose to do something else. I don't understand what happens in worship, except I still don't understand what the preacher said. Or worship is boring and needs more engagement. No. In fact, they will discover firsthand how flavorful a relationship with the God of Abraham is. May we all be a little shaker of salt. Oh, excuse me. If you're on a salt-free or reduced salt diet, then forget the salt. Let your light shine. Amen.
When Pastor told me what he was preaching on and he asked us to sing this song, I thought of my childhood, because this is a song that we used to sing sitting around the campfire in sunbeams and all of the times that the youth got together. So we're going to sing it today. Now, I got to tell you, there's another verse to this that we didn't print, but I'm going to teach it to you because it was my favorite verse. Remember, I was 10 years old, okay? But let's sing it together. This little light of mine, we'll sing the first two verses, then I'm going to teach you the third one that I know, and then we'll sing the last one. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Now here's the verse. Won't let Satan it out. I'm going to let it shine. Okay? Sing it with me. Won't let Satan it out. I'm going to let it shine. Won't let Satan it out. I'm going to let it shine. Won't let Satan it out. I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Jesus gave it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus gave it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus gave it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
How many of you are young enough to remember George Bush Sr.? His motto, 1,000 points of light. Anybody? All right, not Dana Carvey's version, but George. Okay. Well, that is the idea grounded from the Sermon on the Mount. It speaks of letting our light shine before people. It also pairs well with a really good wine, but also the idea that the salt of the earth, that we are invited to add flavor to the lives around us. So in this moment of giving, we actually get to practice shining our light or shaking our salt shaker. These gifts that we give back to God this morning will become salt and light when they become tangible gifts to missions and ministries that this community of faith believes in and supports. This week alone, a $500 check, a salt shaker of salt, was signed for the people who receive hope through Mission Peniel, a compassionate bridge connecting migrant farm workers in Immokalee to resources like food and clothing and faith. So please take one of these steps faithfully that God invites us to take by letting your light shine, letting your salt flavor the lives of people on earth that are in need of some help. The ushers move among us at this time and collect our salt and our light.
The announcements are printed in the yellow portion of your bulletin. Please take note of that. Remember, please, that on Wednesday, we're going to start quilting again. Now, we're not expecting a huge group, but boy, would I love to see some new folks. Please come and help us. You will enjoy it, I guarantee. We bring a sack lunch. We start at 12 noon. We have lunch, and we are done by 3 o'clock. Please come and enjoy the time of fellowship. If you don't know how to sew, we'll teach you. If you don't want to sew, there are a lot of other things that you can do. Believe me, please just come and enjoy the time with us as we prepare the prayer quilts for those in our community who are ill or in hospital. And Are there, yes, Pastor, you had an announcement, right?
Next week is World Communion Sunday, meaning that every time zone around the globe, people of faith will be celebrating this sacred meal. So you're invited to be a part of that. And we will have that incorporated into worship. Also, next Sunday, we're going to receive new members. And if you're interested or want to find out what it means to journey with Thomas Edison on this faith journey that you're at right now, you can call the church office. My cell phone is listed for you right here in your announcements. Text me, call me. I'm usually up at 4 a.m., especially with the dogs these days. They're trying to figure out where they sleep better. But if you want to talk or have any questions about what it means to be a member, an associate member of Thomas Edison, please give us a call, and we'll chat.
And you can call me before 4 a.m. because I'm usually up till that late.
Yes.
So we got it covered, okay? 24-hour service. Were there any other announcements? The women's group? Anything? No. All righty. Shall we join together in worship as we do in this church, bringing the entire service full circle as we stand and sing our doxology together?
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Our worship is ended, but now our salty service begins. Go from this place, for you and I are the body of Christ, and the whole world awaits us. So live passionately, love faithfully, and celebrate every moment of your life from now until the finale. Our God of relentless and amazing grace goes with us. Amen.